thank you all for coming. This talk is very much ideas, thinking. It's there partly to be a little bit provocative. I kind of try in these situations really not to do a kind of sales talk, because I know it's very easy in conferences to just get overloaded with sales stuff. So what we've got here is really just kind of like material for thinking about. And because of that, if anybody's kind of wants to interrupt and ask questions, really feel free. You know, it's kind of like there's no problem with this being a two-way thing. So the theme of the talk is that digital learning is still this revolution waiting to happen. And that from that actually saying that it hasn't yet happened. And kind of one of the really important things is that revolutions don't happen overnight. And a great example of that is the film industry, where if we watch this little clip, one of the very earliest blockbusters. So the interesting thing from this was the guy behind it, Georges Méliès, was a professional magician. He actually discovered the jump cut by an accidental camera jam, where he was filming a bus, the camera stopped, and when he got it working again, the bus had been replaced with a car, and from that he learned that he could actually do that while making a film and jump cut from one object to another. Now, he made 500 movies, incredibly popular, and in those 500 movies, he never once moved the camera. The camera stayed still for every single movie. And that moon that you saw, instead of moving the camera towards the moon, he moved the moon towards the camera. And the reason why was because from his view, and from the audience's viewpoint, what they were experiencing was an enhanced version of theatre. That the film was there to give you the best seat in the theatre. And the jump cut and other sorts of effects that they put in there were just simply enhanced theatre. They were making theatre fancier, more magical than it was before. And it took over 30 years for film to really evolve a unique language that was very, very different and very separate from theatre. So continuity editing, where this 3 generations of filmmakers went through to discover that you could use multiple cameras, multiple viewpoints, multiple scenes, and multiple scene durations, where you'd build up the rhythm of the scenes and they'd get shorter and shorter to produce the climax. And then montage editing evolved in the Soviet Union, where they did the opposite to continuity editing, where they broke time and space and they created conflicting shots to generate emotion and ideas. And these 2 things have come together to form the bedrock of the modern film language. But it was 30 years from that to move from that stage with a preset scene to the film language that we know and love nowadays. And if we think about e-learning, and if we think about training, class-based courses, set time away from work, a set structure of learning, set learning objectives, and we kind of think of e-learning generally, kind of on the whole, it's seen as a better way to access my training. It's the learning management systems very much evolved from the class and course management. The SCORM format, the packaging of learning objects, was very much about content for learning as unique content that was there for learning. It differentiated itself from other types of content. And this really is training plus. It's the same but better. It's doing what we were doing in the training world and is now doing it interactively with game methodologies, whatever. But it's like that theatre plus. It is keeping the seat in the same place. It is following the rules and the language that we had from training, but it's just taking advantage of the extra capabilities of our digital technologies. And if we think of 70-20-10, the kind of 70% on the job, the 20% from peers, 10% from formal courses, e-learning is very much dominating that 10% space. And a lot of people see its role purely in that. There is some experimentation in the other areas, but on the whole it's seen that's where e-learning lives. Well, I kind of feel that now we're at and having been involved in e-learning for over 15 years, I kind of feel we're now at some kind of end of a honeymoon with e-learning. That there's these different conflicting drivers around us. There's been the recession, the economic crisis. A lot of e-learning got caught up in the whole cost-cutting drive. Basically, we got to points where it was trained by PowerPoint or death by PowerPoint. And e-learning was often seen as a way just to make training cheaper. But around that, at the same time, we've also got this growing pace of change where globalization, technology, social media revolutions, smartphones, etc., whole big shifts in business, there's this whole world changing around us. And e-learning, which was once at that cutting edge, no longer feels that it actually sits in that place. And there's kind of the Gartner hype cycle. I don't know if you've seen this thing. They apply it to, you can pretty well apply this to any business out there, any technology, innovation. You get this initial trigger, you get this huge, wonderful peak of inflated expectations where it's going to change the world, it's going to make everything better for everybody, it's going to solve absolutely everything, and then after that you get the collapse and you get this trough of disillusionment. Now maybe we're a little bit out of the trough, but kind of just to add a little bit of dramatic emphasis, I put us right there, bang in the trough itself. But the trough is not the end. From the trough, you actually get this slope of enlightenment, and then it becomes a standard, normal way of doing things. And I believe that we've not yet climbed our way up out of this. We've not yet evolved that new language for e-learning that will allow us to move from beyond just that initial hype to something that is absolutely fundamental part of day-to-day life in work. So just some kind of outside the e-learning world, just a kind of quick glimpse at the kind of the technological roller coaster that is going on around us. So you'll all know all of this. PCs flatlining in sales, tablets ever rising, 320 million for this year. Smartphones, 1.9 billion smartphones. I mean, it's not that long ago I can remember thinking Apple were mad doing a phone. I was thinking this is just going to be another Newton that, if any of you remember Newton from the past, that really flopped very badly. But Apple took everything by storm and changed that completely. It's the device that we feel most stressed about if lost. Research has shown that we get more worried about losing it than we'd worry about losing our passport. And over 2 hours a day, it is just that is an absolute integral part of our life. Almost everything you can think about, that smartphone is there doing that for you. It is just become, in such an amazing short period of time, it has just become core to our lives. And the amazing thing is that if you take all the mobile devices, there are more mobile devices than people. And I did a project over in Bangladesh, a few weeks research investigating learning approaches for language in Bangladesh. No matter how remote a village I got to, I couldn't find people without mobile phones. I could find them without televisions, I could find them without DVD players, I could not find them without mobile phones. Mobiles have, wherever you go in the world, the mobile is there. And then at the same time, to kind of related to the smartphone rise is also this whole social transformation. The numbers are just amazing. Facebook, 1.23 billion active monthly users. And despite everybody saying that the end is nigh for Facebook, those numbers keep on increasing. So they've yet to reach the top of that. WhatsApp, 450 million plus users in just 4 years. Even faster pace of change than Facebook. Instant messaging generally, 18 trillion messages sent globally every year. And kind of the old world where the PC was a device that was created as a machine, and you accommodated yourself around that machine. You had that desktop, you had that desk. The new world is one where the devices accommodate around our lifestyles, and that's why smartphones are so successful. It is technology becoming a human part of our experience rather than a machine that we have to adjust to, creating a world that's always on, always available. And with this roller coaster, I mean, who knows which ones work or which ones don't work, but there's no sign that there's any stopping to this roller coaster. I think the one thing we can guarantee, we don't know what the change will be, but the one thing we do absolutely know is that there is going to be a constant stream of yet more change in the years ahead. Now, if we look at the learning space and the impact of technology on learning, both education and training, we've seen the rise of MOOCs, massive open online courses. The numbers are pretty huge. iTunes U, over 1 billion downloads for their educational resources. 16 million researchers in Atticmedia.edu. Coursera, 11 million students. Huge numbers moving in there. Interestingly, not people use MOOCs, well, they start using them, but they don't necessarily finish. There's a huge appetite for accessing content, but I think MOOCs also are part of this theatre transition. They are not yet a form of e-learning that is native to digital, but the demand for them shows that there is a huge need for digital to answer educational and learning requirements. And then anything you want to ask, if you want to ask anything whatsoever, and these numbers really are amazing. Ask FM has 25 billion answers on there. Quora, 9.2 million monthly users. Yahoo, 300 million questions. And as well as those spaces, countless forums and communities that people go to find help. And just this massive amount of content out there, where Google have been switching away, if you've noticed, it's quite subtle, they've been switching away from the keyword search to increasingly answering questions. Increasingly, you can just go to Google and say, what was so-and-so? And they've been building this encyclopedia of 570 million plus concepts, relationships, facts, figures that allow Google to try and answer what people want to know. And then Wikipedia, 4.5 million articles, one of the highest traffic websites on the internet. And then we're also seeing around the kind of assessment space, we're seeing new innovations, open badges, the Tin Can API. This is all moving away from the notion where SCORM said content is unique for learning. This says any content can be valid for learning. So content that you experience, your Tin Can API, the open badges allows you to put that into your learning record store and say, this is an example of content that I've been through that has evidence that I've been learning on this subject. And it's kind of a shift to more meaningful data collection around my learning experience. And what we see is that, I mean, the old world, basically what dominated the old world, and this was really entire human history, and this is the level of change that we're currently facing. It was scarcity of supply which dominated our experiences, not just with knowledge, with everything. But what we're seeing in technology is that technology is making all this information massively easily available, and we're moving away from this space where learning was in these walled gardens, where it was difficult to access. You had to wait to be able to get there. You had to be able to qualify to get there, to a world where it's the economics of oversupply, where the new world is one where it's no longer difficult to get content. It's actually too easy. There is an oversupply of information, an oversupply of people who want to help me, and a kind of massive repository of any subject that I want to find information on, help on, is out there for me. And this whole change in the dynamics, the economics of learning, creates a new opportunity and new challenges. This world is here whether we like it or not, and our challenge is to be able to understand how to use it. And what we've got is we've got the whole benefits of speed, but then we've got the problem of quality. I can easily access information, but actually is that information of any use to me? Is it right? Is it correct? Can I actually trust it? I can easily find a so-called expert on anything, but can I actually trust that expert to help me? The open networks versus the closed, secure networks. Previously we had trusted sources. You had a library where content in that library was vetted. Those books were known to be authoritative. Our new open world, it's down to us to actually do that work. So thinking about this and thinking about the opportunity and the challenge that is facing us, these are some ideas on how we could transform our e-learning approaches to actually accommodate this huge change in the world around us that is affecting everybody in the workplace and outside the workplace, and just think of some of the things, some of the implications of these changes on how we perceive e-learning. So, and just to be deliberately provocative, radical, forget this whole 70-20-10 thing. I was trying to figure out why it's useful. There are elements where I can see it's useful for budgeting and planning, but actually I don't think of my learning at work split between a formal course, between asking somebody, doing the job. What I have is I have things that I need to learn, and what I want is to be able to answer those needs at any point, any time. And so what we should do is replace the 70-20-10 with the idea of a kind of learning backbone. A learning backbone that will be designed so that any learning need, any learning requirement, wherever I am, whatever situation I'm in, I'm able to access the best thing at that moment to be able to help me with that learning need. Now that may well be accessing a room with a formal course in it. That may well be part of that. This is not saying that everything becomes digital. It is saying that there's this backbone, this invisible backbone that we can access at the best time, at the time that we want to, in the way that we want to, and that the whole part of the whole purpose of the L&D department is to actually design this backbone so that it serves that 100%, not that 10% of work life. Like smartphones, when, where, and how, they're not useful in every situation, they will be useful in some situations. Desktops, real-world spaces, searching, social, etc. To think of that as a whole and to think how can we design a backbone that actually provides the content, the help, etc. that people need. And then forget also this split between formal versus informal. It's kind of, I don't really think whether this is formal learning or informal learning. What I think is I need to know something, I need to understand something, and I want help. And the most important thing is that I find the right person to help me. So we replace formal with and informal with the idea of learning connectivity, where what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to quickly find the right person to help me. Now that may well be a formal expert, or it may not. It will depend on my learning need, but it's my learning need which is driving it rather than whether it's classed as formal content or informal content. I don't think to myself, do I have a formal learning need or do I have an informal learning need? I simply have a learning need and I need to find people who can help me. So what we need to do is we need to design networks so in our organizations we're able to find the people out there and connect and share and ask and receive help and also potentially give help as well. And I think that it also requires that we see this beyond just the kind of employees. It's the whole stakeholders of businesses. It's that we also need to learn from our customers. We can use this learning connectivity to open channels to our customers so that we learn from them, but also really importantly so that they actually also learn about us. There's this interesting phenomenon where social media is being correlated with an ever-increasing decline in trust in brands, where the Chinese whispers, the rumors, etc. in social media go out and they damage the brand. I mean, there was a good article in The Economist about how McDonald's have really suffered from their inability to respond to a huge amount of criticism in social media about how they produce their food. Now, their customers need to understand better about how they work. If they're actually not being as bad as the Chinese whispers are saying, McDonald's needs to make sure that that education is reaching out to their customers. And this means that our learning approaches need to move beyond just seeing employees, but also seeing as part of the marketing function, that it is something which engages everybody who's involved. Everybody who's a stakeholder in that business, there is a learning element to it. There's a learning type of engagement required. And then forget training evaluation. We should not see any one element of learning in isolation. When you evaluate that one piece of training and you get your little happy sheet and you say, I like it, and you look at the individual, you are evaluating that single piece of training. What we need to move to is, I'm calling a kind of learning pulse. We have the pulse on the learning success of the organization. And to see that move from individuals to the entire business. We don't just learn in isolation. We love going to college and places where there's other people because we like learning from other people. And it is the dynamics of a group which makes learning successful. It is not just a single individual. And what we need to do is we need to develop systems and tools so that we can naturally and organically collect and measure and develop this pulse so that we can get a real sense of how well our organization is doing and how well the learning is being fed across everybody. Effectively, it's the blood in that organization. How well is it? How healthy is that organization is very much related to the learning success. And what this means is that we should also forget the notion of cost versus profit center. I've often come across organizations where the learning L&D is seen as a cost rather than effectively as a burden. For me, this is just completely crazy. You know, in our world of ever-increasing change, the one thing we guarantee is that businesses need to be able to change and adapt. To be able to do that, they need to be able to learn, they need to be able to understand, they need to be able to share. And what we need to be able to what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to create the space and time for reflection. We need to be able to, in this world of change, we need people to be able to choose between what's hype and what is substance. We need to be able to create the rigor so that people really question and think through things. And that means that learning has to be core to the business strategy. That actually the business as a whole has to see learning not as something which you add on the side to train people to do what the business requires, but actually the business itself is a learning organization that has the ability to change, has the ability to adapt, has the ability to use the learning in a way that's absolutely real and contributes in the end to the bottom line of the business. And that's what I'm kind of calling here an intelligent business. And to kind of sum up the thinking there is kind of, I use the word learnscape, that what we need to do is, instead of seeing courses, etc., that actually what we need to understand is the entire foundational learnscape that is operating within our organization, all those different touch points, all those different connections, all the different spaces, real world, digital, other, how they work together, and how we can design this learnscape so that it really actually feeds and powers our business and fundamentally delivers to the business objectives. And that is the aim and the purpose of the learnscape, to actually make that business successful. So kind of, in summary, this kind of revolution, this kind of new language, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but I feel this is the kind of direction that things need to move in, where there's this backbone that's invisible, that is powering learning across all aspects of our business, connectivity which allows people to allow the business to really take advantage of the intellectual capital in that business. I mean, I've worked in businesses where it's so many things are repeated every year because so little was shared from what people did the year before. There's just this constant reiteration over and over again because we are just not very good at this connectivity. And this learning pulse, so we can monitor how well it's doing and so we can constantly evolve it. There will never be any fixed learnscape. There will never be a simple, here is the solution. It is always going to be a constantly evolving one because it itself will change the way the business operates, and as it changes, it will demand that the learnscape itself changes to respond to that. And what this really needs to be able to, for this to happen, is a higher profile, more integrated role for learning. So that learning, like marketing, like sales, would be actually seen as absolutely the critical thing for business success. So I've spent, I mean, this is, I think, the fourth talk I've done at this conference, and these ideas have evolved as I've talked through this. And I've been working with a team of L&D professionals over these ideas. If anybody's interested in exploring this with us further, then we'd be really excited to talk. We know that this is quite radical. It's quite futuristic, but we do feel that this is the type of direction that e-learning needs to go. So, okay, I shall now back to normal life, just some practical examples of the types of things that that we do, and also they're kind of giving us, they've been moving in this direction. With PwC, we produce this whole series of little 5-minute bites, view on your iPad, iPhone, all about leadership. They were designed so that not only they were for the individual, but also if that individual was in a meeting, they could simply they could turn the iPad round and it would go into a mode that would actually work with the group as a whole. So I was thinking about learning just as an everyday part of work rather than as something that you go to at a specific moment. And then likewise, brand language. This was a little interactive branching narrative designed to fill those spare moments, little kind of intriguing little stories to help people understand how the PwC brand worked and how they should communicate it and how they should live up to it. And then this is the one I mentioned, this my Bangladesh trip. This was with what was then BBC World Service Trust, is now BBC Media Action. This was going off to find a way to deliver English language learning in Bangladesh. The interesting thing with this was that there was a huge assumption that it would be a high-tech solution. But what we found out was actually no. You could actually go very, very simple. A phone number was set up where you rang up the phone number and you basically got voicemail, which was your English language lesson. And you remembered your number, and when you phoned back again, it took you to the next lesson. It's effectively radio on demand. using any phone anywhere could access this. Subsidized number, made it very cheap. Over 25 million people used this in the first year. Very, very simple. After you had your little audio lesson, you then got text messages just summing up what you've learned, and also those text messages with little quizzes, was it A, B, or C? And I think on that technological roller coaster, because we don't build in time also for reflection, it's very easy just to do the latest thing with the latest tech, but actually the language isn't about the technology, the language is about how you use digital interaction for learning purposes. And that there are often opportunities with bog standard technology that's been around for ages that we could be doing that we're not seeing because we're too focused on just the latest piece of hype or whatever that is out there. Now, okay, so that's got a few minutes spare before the end. We also do have an iWatch, which we are giving away. So if you're interested in getting an iWatch, leave us your business card. We've developed a little, we call it Glance and Learn, a little learning app on it, which is it's a beta version, but we'll keep on releasing and improving it. It's about learning how to manage meetings. So it looks at your calendar when you have a next meeting and then gives you little tips on how to manage your meeting, etc. So if you are interested, do leave your business card if you would like to win that. Now, I'm conscious I've just talked, so in the few minutes we've got, if anybody is interested in asking any questions, disagreeing with anything I've said, feel completely free, or any thoughts, observations, or if you prefer, you can come to us we're just here, actually just there. You can come and talk to us in a slightly more private space there. There you go. Thank you.